Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eve. So our first fight here is Super Pride, which is not too terribly exciting, but I feel like whenever you walk to the first door and what awaits on the other side is either a mini-boss or a super mini-boss, then you know you're in for a very fun run. And especially in this case, I think it really depends on just how you play Eve and how you approach that fight. That's gonna be the deciding factor in if you actually make it through the entire fight alive, or maybe if you take some damage or no damage at all. And how I would approach this in most scenarios is I wouldn't use the Razor Blade at all. I know there are some players, or at least that's what I used to do, I just immediately use the Razor Blade as soon as I spawn, and that would of course allow me to get in my Horror Babylon transformation, but also it would leave me very vulnerable at only one full red hell container. And of course, when I enter the fight in that position, I would be in a much worse spot, because it's very easy to get hit once or even twice against an enemy like Super Pride. He might spawn Super Troll Bombs in a position where you can't avoid them, maybe he does some other attack that kind of stacks on top of that and there's really no way for you to escape. But if you approach it from a different perspective, so for example, like maybe I'm a bit more conservative now, but if I don't use my Razor Blade immediately, I can enter that fight and then decide whatever I think the Razor Blade is worth using or not. Or maybe if I'm a really good player, what I could do is of course use the Razor Blade in order to mitigate the damage that I would otherwise take when fighting Super Pride. And if you're only at one red held container, you really can't do that. So the only way to really approach this fight, I think that the ideal case would be to enter it, try to fight him in your base form, and when you feel like you're gonna get hit, use the Razor Blade in that position to mitigate the damage penalty, trigger both the damage from the Razor Blade and the Horror Babylon, but also that bird, and just kind of stomp the fight from there. And I feel like because of that, it really does show just how interesting and dynamic character like Eve is, just because it really does depend on your overall playstyle, but also it does depend on just your usage of the active item. It's very proactive, it's not really as much as just use it and get a stat benefit. It's very much so, you kind of have to think about it, and I feel like this really does go in tandem with just the overall theme of Isaac, that risk versus rewards thing that I think I always mention whenever I talk about Eve. But okay, I'm not gonna kind of gush about Eve anymore, because I think at this point you all pretty much know I really like Eve as a character, or at least as a skillful character in daily runs, and if she was here every single day, I feel like I would be okay with that, but obviously it would get boring after a little while. Sometimes you just need that lost daily to kind of spice things up a little bit. But okay, so we did get past a certain point, and the first item we got was Yo Listen. And Yo Listen, I think first of all is the best name for an item that in existence. I think it references sequelitis, or maybe is something in that regard. I'm not sure if they're the first one to make the joke, but that's where I heard the joke first. And essentially it's because you have this pixie that's following you around, and it kind of keeps pestering you and telling you, hey, you need to do this or you need to go here. And of course in this particular case how it works is that it shows you the locations of secret rooms, second secret rooms, tinted drugs, and also crawl spaces. So it's just an A+ item in all regards, because essentially functions like Spelunker's Hat, except with a little bit more usability. Obviously they're not exactly the same items, because Spelunker Hat just shows you what's on the other side of the door, so it does allow you to maybe navigate through the rooms a little bit easier, kind of allows you to use the keys or whichever consumable you might have in a much more optimal, or at least much more informed manner. But in this case I feel like because of just how important crawl spaces are, and because of how much work it really takes out of it to find them, with an item like Yo Listen, the little pixie actually is such a great benefit, and whenever you can find a crawl space and then a dark market, that's pretty much a one run by itself. So I feel like if there is a potential for that, then this item really does have it. Of course, as the run went on, I was kind of stuck in a position where I felt this was going to be another difficult run, but I think it really kind of depended on just how you use your Joker cards. And I think this is, probably the biggest thing of this entire run, or at least what defined it for me, is my usage of the Joker card. So I think in a lot of situations when you get the Joker card, you want to be very smart about it. You want to use it at the end of the floor if there is no Devil Deal, or of course you want to save it for a floor that usually doesn't have a Devil Deal at all, so maybe like the Cathedral, maybe the Void, or whatever. But in this particular case, I try to use it as fast as possible, because I had the Lost Vessel item. And a Lost Vessel gives you flight if you have no red hell containers. But at that point, because I picked up experimental treatment, I had one red hell container, and of course I wanted to get rid of it. So what I did is, as soon as I entered that particular floor, I used the Joker card in hopes of getting a Devil Deals, just so I could have flight back again, and of course that's shield that you get when you actually have a Lost Vessel. So I went in, used the Joker card. Sadly, there wasn't a Devil Deal, but of course I think that really would change depending if you went and did it via the natural boss route, because the items that you get by using the Joker card or just by going and beating the boss and then getting the Devil Deal are different. And of course I think it's also different if you enter it from a red chest. And I think the reasoning for that, I kind of thought about it, but there's no natural Devil Deal on the very first floor, of course. And if you use the Joker card on the very first floor, of course you need to get to the Devil Deal. So instead of the game generating a Devil Deal every time a floor is not consumed, but generated, it generates it on the spot. So whenever you use the Joker card, then the Devil Deal is generated. And I think this is of course different as opposed to Devil Deal, which is generated after you beat the boss fight. And just because the timestamps and the RNGC that you're gonna get from doing things at a different time is different, then of course the Devil Deal is gonna have different items in the different layout as well. So this is just my theory, or at least my explanation for it. I kind of thought about it, and this seems to make sense. But obviously, if there is something else going on behind the scenes, I would love to know, because I feel like these little mechanics and explanations of them not only give us insight into the code, but also it does allow us to kind of understand what's going on better. And maybe not in this instance, in this particular instance, but maybe there's a mechanic that works similarly, and just knowing this information does allow you maybe to make a more informed decision in some cases. But okay, so we did get through there, and I mentioned the Joker cards, and of course I used the Joker card in that one particular spot, but also got a few more Joker cards later. And instead, me kind of being a bit hasty, I guess, just because I used it in an inopportune moment at the very first time, I just felt like I should kind of go buck wild and just start using them as soon as I get them. And I was kind of rewarded for that, because there were so many Joker cards, I don't think it ever actually punished me for my decisions, even though it was a suboptimal play. Especially on this floor, I have a 72% chance to get a Devil Deal at the end, and yet I used the Joker card in order to get to the Devil Deal, which I should have really just waited, went to the boss, and then of course used it. But of course I was kind of strapped for time in this case, so I really didn't have a lot of time to think about it. I just wanted to get the strongest possible, just to increase my chances of actually getting to the Hush fight. So I know this is my reasoning, and it's not a good reasoning, because again, I could have just saved the Joker card. If I did get a Devil Deal, of course I could have just went to it naturally, and if I didn't, I could have used it on the Harsh floor in order to get a Devil Deal here, and that would not only increase my exploration bonus points for getting to more rooms, but also increase my chances of actually getting some really good items. But with how everything turned out, I still got lucky enough to get Brimstone at one floor, so I don't think it was too big of a deal, but I think it's worth mentioning, because of what I did is not what you should do, but in this particular case it just happened to be the right choice, even if that is, I think, not optimal, or at least it's not the right choice when you make it, but the results of the bad choices that you make turn it into a right choice, if that makes any more sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't do what I did, do what I'm telling you to do, because that is gonna give you more possibilities, or at least more success on the average case scenario. So just wait, go to the end of the floor, if there is no Devil Deal, then use the Joker card, because that way you're saving it, and you're always gonna be getting at least one more Devil Deal that you would get naturally by just going through the game. So okay, now that I talked about this, we can actually focus on the run again, which is really, there's not more to be said. We had Brimstone, we had a lot of damage upgrade items, we had some consumables, and of course, because we went to the Void floor, there's just some bunch of chests and drops on the ground. Because we had Contract from below, that also helped our situation quite a bit, and we were actually in a pretty good spot from this point forward. Our damage was great, our consumable bonus was great, our exploration bonus was great, because we had Yo Listen, so we pretty much visited every single secret room and second secret room, and of course every single crawl space that occurred. But I think there was only one of those, or at least from what I've seen. Maybe there were more, but I didn't have bombs, or maybe I just didn't notice it. But it did turn out to be quite one of those very fruitful runs, and I feel like because of how it turned out, it's one of those things where if you did go to the end, if you did do everything that you're supposed to do, and maybe if you did get a bit lucky like I did with Brimstone, then it's pretty much a guaranteed run to get the maximum amount of exploration bonus, but also it's pretty much guaranteed that you're gonna get to the end with basically everything done that you need to do. So for that reason, I would expect a lot of people to have pretty much the same swag bonus, so pretty much again the same exploration bonus, and maybe the biggest difference here would again be damage penalty. And I was kind of surprised, because I thought my damage penalty was gonna be a lot higher. 4,500 is not little, definitely not little, but it's not super a lot, and I feel like because of that I was kind of surprised that it was actually only 4,500. I was sure it was gonna be something like 7,000, but I guess just over time I'm getting better, but I'm not really realizing it because I always feel like I'm very bad at dodging, but just because I'm playing so much of these dailies and I'm kind of being more mindful, I guess, then I'm not taking as much damage, and I guess that's exciting. So we did finish in the 12th place, which I think is like top 10, and that's a really good score. I can't complain too much about it. And for how straightforward this run was, just because of the things I've mentioned. I really felt like it was gonna be one of those runs where damage penalty is gonna play the biggest difference. Maybe it does, and some other people just took more damage, but it really does feel like not everyone did find this winning combination of items that I did. So maybe that makes us a little bit lucky, that maybe makes us a little bit good. I'm not really sure, but what I do hope is that you enjoyed this run, and that you hope, no, not you hope, I hope to see you next time.